Okay, picture this. You've just finished a double shift, you're exhausted, and a non-clinical manager comes up to you with an urgent request. They need a spreadsheet. It's got names, NHS numbers, diagnoses, all of it. And they want you to email it to their personal Gmail account right now so they can finish a service dashboard. And then they just casually mention they want to use it for a research poster later. So what's the very first thing you do? That little pause, that feeling in your gut that just screams, no, I can't do that. That's your professional instinct, and it's a good one. But in healthcare, and especially when you're facing high-stakes assessments, you need more than a gut feeling. You need to know exactly why it's wrong and what the correct, legally defensible procedure actually is. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're getting into UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018. We want to give you those essential high-yield mental shortcuts to make safe decisions about patient data fast.
And you really do need a framework for this because health information isn't just any old data. It's what UK GDPR calls special category data, which basically means the rules are doubled. It's much stricter. So we have to move beyond these simple ideas like thinking clinical consent covers everything, because it doesn't. You need to understand the two legal anchors that form the backbone of all of this. Yeah, if you take one thing away, let it be this. You have to pick a lawful basis from Article 6 and a condition from Article 9. Then you share the absolute minimum you need only through secure systems, and you document everything.
Okay, let's unpack that. Health data, we're talking diagnoses, mental health records, you name it. It's probably the most sensitive information there is. So why this structure? Why two concurrent legal tests?
Well, it's completely intentional. The law basically recognizes that this kind of data is so sensitive that if it gets out or gets misused, the risk is incredibly high. So any processing, and that means anything from writing a note, storing it, to sharing it, has to pass two separate tests at the same time. We call it the dual legal anchor. You need an Article 6 lawful basis, and then you also need an Article 9 special category condition. If you can't tick both of those boxes, what you're doing is unlawful. Simple as that.
So it's like a two-key security system.
Yeah.
For us in the NHS, providing direct patient care, what are those two keys most of the time?
That's a great question. For direct patient care, the combination you'll rely on, and the one that scores highest in exams, is really specific. Your first key from Article 6 is almost always going to be Article 6(1)(e), public task.
Public task.
Right. It just means the hospital or trust has an official statutory duty to provide healthcare. Then your second key from Article 9 is Article 9(2), health or social care.
I think that's going to be a surprise for a lot of people. Can we just pause on that for a second?
Yeah.
Because everyone defaults to thinking about consent. Why is public task the anchor here and not my GDPR consent as a patient?
That is the absolute critical distinction. Let's be really clear. Clinical consent, the conversation you have before a procedure, that's ethically mandatory. It's a GMC duty, it's common law, it's non-negotiable. But under GDPR, the legal basis for the processing of the data, within the team to actually treat you, that's public task. And it's actually safer for you as the patient.
How so?
Well, think about it. If we only relied on consent for processing and a patient withdrew it halfway through their treatment, we'd be legally blocked from updating their notes or sharing information with the next specialist on their case. It would be chaos. Public task ensures that the essential clinical work can continue safely and legally.
So clinical consent for the treatment, public task for the data processing that makes the treatment happen.
Okay.
But what happens if the purpose shifts? Say it's not for one patient's direct care anymore, but for a public health screening program.
Then your legal basis might change. You still need an Article 6 and an Article 9 key, but your Article 9 key might switch. For public health, you'd likely use 9(2)(i). For research or archiving, you'd be looking at 9(2)(j). And that one, for research, comes with extra, really robust safeguards like minimizing the data or pseudonymizing it.
So there's our first high-yield step. Before you do anything, check the purpose. Is this direct care or something else? Then you pick your bases, Article 6 and Article 9, and you record them. And this is where it gets really practical, isn't it? Where the law meets the reality of a busy ward. We've got a right to process the data, our two keys, but how do we actually do it safely?
Exactly. And this brings us right back to that opening scenario and straight into the core data protection principles. Two of them are just massive flashing red lights in that situation: data minimization and integrity and confidentiality, the security principle.
Okay, let's start with minimization.
Right. You are legally required to share only what is absolutely necessary. It's on a need-to-know basis, and it has to be proportionate. So, back to that manager. They asked for names, NHS numbers, and diagnoses. But if the dashboard only needs to show, say, the prevalence of a diagnosis, do do they really need the patient's name?
No.
And do they need the NHS number if a local code would work?
Probably not.
Exactly. So even if they had a lawful basis, asking for all that identifiable data when an anonymized summary would do the job is an immediate breach of the minimization principle. You have to challenge it.
And then there's security, the personal Gmail account. This is the big organizational pitfall, isn't it?
It's the trap you must never, ever fall into. Using unapproved systems, personal email, WhatsApp, you name it, for identifiable patient data is a catastrophic governance fail. And it doesn't matter if they say, oh, but it's encrypted. That's irrelevant. Those systems aren't managed or audited by the NHS organization.
You lose all control.
You lose everything. Control over who sees it, how long it's kept. And critically, it doesn't comply with the DSP Toolkit, the Data Security and Protection Toolkit. That's the assurance mechanism for the whole NHS. If the system isn't covered by that, you simply cannot use it for patient data, period.
So if you're ever in that position, what's the clear, defensible thing you can say to shut down the unsafe request but still be helpful?
You need to combine the legal basis with the security rule. Something like, we're happy to help with this, but for any work like this, we must rely on Article 6 and 9. We'll share the minimum necessary data, but it has to be through an approved, secure system, not personal email.
Perfect. Okay, let's broaden this out. What about when data is needed for something like that research poster the manager mentioned, or for big picture service planning? This is where transparency comes in, right? And the patient's right to object.
Yes, this is a major shift. The moment you step outside of direct individual care, you're in the world of secondary uses. And here, you have to be acutely aware of the National Data Opt-out, the NDO.
The NDO. Tell us about that.
It's a patient's right to opt out of their confidential information being used for purposes beyond their own care, like research or planning. So organizations have a duty to check and respect that opt-out. The whole principle is about transparency. No surprises for the patient. They should know how their data is being used.
So for that manager's research poster, if it used identifiable data, you'd first have to check if any of those patients had opted out.
100%. And if the project is high risk, say it involves new tech or huge data sets, there's another step. The organization has to complete a Data Protection Impact Assessment, a DPIA.
A DPIA?
Yeah, it's a formal process to identify and mitigate risks to people's rights before you even start. It's a critical safety check.
And on top of all these layers, there are the day-to-day administrative duties, like subject access requests.
Right, SARS. That's when a patient asks for a copy of their medical records. It's a fundamental right. The key thing here for you to know is the timeline. Once a SAR comes in, you have to acknowledge it, and you have 1 month to provide the information.
1 month.
1 month. Now, it can be extended by 2 more months if it's really complex, but you have to tell the patient why. A really common trap is just saying, oh, we're too busy. That is not a valid reason. It's a compliance failure.
Okay, let's shift to the most urgent scenario, the data breach. The moment you find out it's happened, a clock starts ticking.
An unforgiving clock, yes. If you discover a potential breach data has been lost, sent to the wrong person, anything like that, you have a 3-step playbook. Contain it, assess the risk, and log it. You need a clear record of what happened, when, and what data was involved.
And what's that critical deadline everyone needs to know?
72 hours. If the breach is notifiable, and that means it's likely to result in a risk to people's rights and freedoms, you have to report it to the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, within 72 hours of becoming aware of it.
Not from when it happened, but from when you became aware.
Exactly. And if the risk to the individuals is high, you have to tell them directly to. Missing that 72-hour window is a massive failure.
Right. But often, the biggest risks aren't these huge, dramatic breaches. They're the small, tempting shortcuts people take every day. Let's run through the 4 big trap answers you see in assessments.
Okay. Trap number 1 is thinking, we have consent so we can share everything. This fails on 2 counts. First, as we said, clinical consent isn't the GDPR basis for processing. And second, it totally ignores data minimization. You can't just send the entire record because the patient agreed to treatment.
Trap 2 takes us right back to our manager and his Gmail account.
Yeah, send it via WhatsApp. It's encrypted. It's still an unapproved, untraceable route. The organization has no control. It's a simple governance fail. Only use DSP Toolkit assured systems.
And trap number 3, this one is driven by that clinical urgency.
It is. Share first, do the paperwork later. This is so dangerous. It means you're processing special category data without having your legal basis sorted first. The legal footing has to be there before the data moves.
And the final trap, which sounds responsible but actually isn't.
Refuse all non-clinical requests outright. Just saying no to everything. We have to be proportionate. Blocking every request stops vital public health work, essential audits, and important research. Our job is to be an enabler of safe and lawful sharing, not a blocker.
So let's bring it all home. Back to that manager one last time. Personal email, dashboard, research poster. What's the definitive action plan?
Okay. Step 1. You politely but firmly refuse the personal email route immediately. Step 2. You clarify the purposes. The dashboard is one, the research is another. You need a lawful basis, Art 6 and 9 for each. Step 3. For the research part, you apply the national data opt-out check. And step 4, you insist on using a secure approved system and you push for data minimization. Can it be de-identified? The key is saying yes to the legitimate purpose, but a hard no to the unsafe method.
This has been so helpful. And to make it stick, you've got a couple of mnemonics for us.
Yep, the first one covers the whole framework. It's Lawful, Ill 9.
Lawful, not.
So, lawful basis plus Article 9, written record, full transparency, use minimum data, log your decisions. And the 9 is to remind you of Article 9 and that 72-hour breach rule.
I like that. And for the practical steps just before you share anything.
For that, we use basics.
Basics?
Basis, Article 6, Article 9 condition. Security. Information, that's transparency and the opt-out. Cut down. Minimum necessary data.
Yeah.
And store retention rules.
Perfect. So before we finish, let's just nail down the 3 absolute key takeaways from this deep dive.
Number 1, always state your Article 6 plus Article 9 basis before you process anything. And remember, for direct care, it's usually public task, not consent. That's your legal anchor. Number 2, share the minimum necessary data and only ever use approved secure systems. No personal email, no WhatsApp. And number 3, if a data breach is notifiable, that 72-hour deadline to tell the ICO is non-negotiable.
That was an incredibly clarifying look at a really complex area.
Yeah.
It feels much more manageable now.
Well, it's not just legal theory, is it? This is all directly tied to your professional duties and good medical practice. It's about keeping patient information confidential and secure. It's what we all have to do every day.
Absolutely. And, we always talk about the NHS Records Management Code for how long we have to keep records.
Yeah.
But that just covers retention. It makes you think about that final principle of GDPR, accountability. What does it demand from us when that retention period is finally over and the data has to be disposed of? That's the deeper question, isn't it? How do we prove we destroyed it just as securely as we kept it? That's all for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.